The counter device is one of many interesting devices that you can use in Gimkit's new Gimkit Creative mode to build super fun and interesting games with lots of engaging dynamics and mechanics. The counter device essentially just tracks things, different actions that take place in the game. You could use it for so many different reasons, so I'm going to show you a couple. A simple way to illustrate that is I'm going to connect this button to this counter. I'm going to use a wire to connect them. And I'm just going to say when the button is pressed, the counter goes up. I could obviously make it go down or reset the counter if that's what I wanted this button to do, but I'm going to make it go up. So now when I test it, interact with that button, the counter goes up. I can see that right now I can just keep doing that, and I could probably go in and add some different controls to make sure that players couldn't just freely make the counter go up forever. But so that's one way that the counter can be used to track something. Now let's use the counter in combination with the questioner. I'm going to add another wire. I'm actually going to end up adding 2 wires. I'm going to start with the questioner and go to the counter. So now I have some options. When a question is answered correctly, I can increment the counter. When a question is answered incorrectly, I could decrement the counter, make it go down. I'm going to leave it as going up. I'm going to add another wire. And I'm going to say from the counter to the questioner, when a target value is reached, maybe I'll disable the questioner so it can no longer be used, or close the question answering screen so students know that they've answered enough questions. All kinds of different ways I could use this. And then that way, as the game designer, I can choose, control how many questions I want to be answered. Let's look at our sentry example. So I'm going to go from the sentry to the counter first. And we see that our option is when the sentry is knocked out. So that's our event. And then what happens in response to our event could be that the counter goes up, could be that the counter goes down, or that the counter resets. So if I wanted to be keeping track of how many sentries the players had knocked out, I could do that. If I wanted to be counting down from a number, like they need to knock out 10 sentries before something happens, I could do that. I'm just going to keep track of how many they knock out. Let me add another wire that goes the other way from this counter to the sentry. And I can say when a target value is reached, I activate a sentry or I deactivate a sentry. So maybe something else in the game could help me deactivate sentries in my game. Or maybe once they accomplish something, things get a little bit harder and we activate more sentries. So I keep referencing this target value. If I click on my counter to go in and make some changes, I can see that I can set a starting value if I want to. Right now it's set to 0 by default. I can use channels, which are kind of like broadcasting mechanisms. So I don't necessarily need wires for some things. If the counter receives a signal from a certain channel, it can do things like go up or go down. I can decide if the counter is going to be visible to players so that they can see the numbers going up or down, or maybe that's just something invisible that I'm keeping track of in the background of the game. I can use the counter to increase properties, which are just like values that are being stored in the game. And here is the place where I can set target values. So if I want the target value for this counter to be, let's say 10, and then I can use that number in lots of different ways. Again, going back to when the counter target value is reached, I can activate a sentry. So that would mean that I would have to get to 10 before this sentry activated. So the counter can be used for all kinds of interesting things and gives you a lot of control over the behaviors in your game and opens up a lot of creative possibilities for you.